This is the CreaseCast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 139 of the CreaseCast. I am your host, Cody Evertson. With me, as always, is Irvin Lockwood. No, that's not right. Lachlan Irvin, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing it.
Season is kind of in full effect again, isn't it? Well,
yeah, it's in full swing. Yeah, we got everything going here. Games are on. It's good to be back doing this again.
Games.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
as we plug it every episode, watch our YouTube channel. You can see me doing air quotes for the games that we were referring to, because if you're not aware, NHL Preseason is in full effect. Louis Eriksson has scored his first goal in a new uniform. Jonathan Dahlen is flexing hard in the shootout. And Mackenzie Blackwood is not playing for New Jersey because he's an idiot.
Well, not yet anyway. Well, but Cody, he
still needs
his time.
He's taking his time. I didn't think of that.
I saw people being like, I saw a couple of people were like, well, he's taking his time, that's how it goes. As like, look, you've had over a year. You knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Do not sit here and pretend that you're weighing out all your options or that you're reading all of your science journals as if this wasn't a thing you knew was going to be a part of the plan. Like, at the very least, you knew in what, May?
Maybe
April?
July. Like, maybe excusably,
July,
you were like,
the
in
latest?
July,
Yeah.
I had a feeling this might happen. But for Blackwood, too, it's like, has he killed all goodwill he had after being like a Calder nominee or like a Calder favorite at one point for New Jersey? Like, just killed any goodwill he may have built on that team.
Yeah, probably. Like, I mean, the Devils aren't exactly a franchise we think about a lot here in Vancouver. Like, they don't really have any. They don't have any. Really, if it wasn't for Jack Hughes, like, we wouldn't. And I guess Luke Hughes now too. We wouldn't really care and hear about them. They're very I've always there's this project actually I've always wanted to do where I've always wanted to see who is like the most, like, which Canucks opponent is like the one everyone thinks about the least. Like, they're not the most hated. They're not your absolute favorite. They're literally smack dab right in the middle. Yeah. I feel like that's New Jersey. New Jersey is that team, in my opinion. It's them.
Yeah, well, I think there was a stat last year where it was, or not last year, but the year before, where it was like the Canucks hadn't beat New Jersey since like 2010 or something, or 2014.
That tracks.
It's something weird like that. But besides that stat, in my head, I'm like, the only reason Canucks fans even care about New Jersey is if one of the Hughes brothers makes fun of their team. That's it. Otherwise, nobody cares.
Yeah, think about how many times in the last however many years has a game against the Devils started at like 10 in the morning on a Sunday. Like that time where they're very much burying this game, so nobody.
Please don't anybody watch this.
Yeah, please don't watch this. I think literally my only memory of a recent Devils Canucks game is when it was that terrible game where Philip Larson just went headfirst.
Oh, when he got murdered.
Yeah, that's my most vivid memory of a Canucks Devils game in the last however many years. Before that, it goes back to, I remember one time I went to see the Devils and the Canucks at what was still GM Place, I believe at the time. It was Luongo versus Brodeur. So like the Canada matchup, like before the 2010 Olympics, like around that time, and Luongo walked away with the 5-0 shutout win. It was incredible. Yeah, Marcus Naslund was still on that team, I believe. That was that's how long ago.
That's like
that
a
was.
long time ago then.
Long time ago. Oh, at least 08. At least like 07-08.
In my head, I'm like, Brodeur was their goalie for so long. It could have been like two different eras in which you saw him play against Luongo.
Yeah. It could have been. It could very easily be 2008, or it could be all the way in like 2013
or whatever.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Man. Like whenever I think, like, okay, we're totally off topic, but I always think of like Yeah,
This is a
preseason, so it doesn't
preseason.
matter. You're not really listening to this for the current events, so bear with us here. We have to get this out. But how lame was it that, I mean, if you're a Canucks fan, it's awesome that New Jersey traded their pick for Cory Schneider. That pick became Bo Horvat. Canucks fans have got their captain out of it. But it sucks if you were like a really big fan of Cory Schneider because he went to New Jersey and basically had to play second fiddle to like a 38-year-old Martin Brodeur who didn't want to give up the net. And so like Cory Schneider's prime years, like injury-free years, were just completely wasted.
Yeah.
That sucks.
He had just some of the worst luck possible. Like I've maintained in like, and this was even before they traded him, just so we're not like going on the like hindsight thing. Like I was very much on the train of, no, you should trade Schneider over Luongo. Luongo's still like one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, one of the best goalies of all time. Don't trade him in favor of Cory Schneider, especially because Schneider potentially could fetch more on the open market because he's younger and has a more manageable contract. But I think he could have been a lot better than he ended up being. Simply, it just happened that he got so unlucky with injuries down the stretch. Like just as he was getting to his opportunity to really hit his prime, he started getting hurt all the time, and it's such a shame. Do you know where he is now? Do you know what team he plays on?
Isn't he on the Islanders on a PTO or something?
He sure is. He is an Islander now. I believe he's fully signed. I think he's
okay.
I believe he's like the fully signed third string guy now for them. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what happened to him. But good for him for staying around. Yeah,
active.
I believe he's it looks like he's signed. Yeah, it looks like he's unless they bought him out of his last contract. I think he's still technically on the contract he signed with the Devils, potentially. I could be totally off.
I feel like he's been on like 1 year, like over 35-year-old contracts for the last like 3 seasons or something like that.
Oh, you know what? So he got bought out last. Oh, you know what? You're right. He is on I think he is on a PTO right now. He is on a PTO right now because what happened is he got bought out last season by the Devils. And last year he played on League Min for the Islanders. And I guess right now he's on the PTO potentially to get that opportunity again. Because I don't know, because they have Varlamov and Sorokin right now. And then, Schneider potentially is your third string there, right?
That's not bad. Anyways, guys, welcome, as I already said, to the CreaseCast. We're actually going to talk about the Canucks very shortly. We're going to actually talk about the bad news first because, well, I mean, just bad shitty news. Not really bad news, just crummy news.
It's unfortunate. It's sad.
We'll get the crummy news out of the way first because there was actually games to talk about, and those are fun. A lot of takeaways, both good and bad. And so let's get right into it. First things first, though, on the crummy news, still nothing on Pettersson or Hughes contracts. Neither are signed. Just earlier, before we were recording, Satyar Shah via @Taj1944 on Twitter reporting that the Canucks contract talks have been delayed because of something over contract bonuses or signing bonuses, and just like the Canucks' reluctance to actually add signing bonuses into the first years of their deals. Just
it's info. We're not putting necessarily an opinion there. It's just it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It's how worried are you? Like seriously, like right now, how worried are you worried? Are you even worried at all? Because I mean, part of me is like, I'm not like, part of me is very like zen about it, but also part of me is freaking out. I'm very much in like two camps on that one.
It's definitely like a 50-50 situation because I have like Jim Benning's really rough on signing free agents to contracts. Like he always just kind of pays like the premium. And when it comes to re-signing or re-upping like his young guys that have been drafted, like Horvat's on a killer second deal. Besser's bridge deal, it's high and there's a really high qualifying offer, but like I have faith that Hughes and Pettersson's deals are going to be like as good as they can be given how hamstrung they are by their own cap problems. So like on one hand, I'm like, I know they're going to get signed. It's going to happen. They're not going to like miss the entire year. They might miss like a week of like the season for all we know at this current rate. But I have a feeling they'll still be decent enough deals. They might suck if they go walk them both into free agency, but I think the dollar value will be good enough that maybe everyone looks at this and is going, they made the best out of a bad situation, asterisk, that they created.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like, it shouldn't have been like this. And I feel like we have this conversation
every
show,
20 minutes on the show,
especially lately. Like, with the Pettersson Hughes thing.
I mean, you kind of have to, right?
We have to, obviously. It is, as long as they're not signed, it's the most important thing. It's the most important story about the Canucks until they get back. Yeah. Like, no matter how great Jack Rathbone does, no matter how much Danila Klimovich defies the odds, no matter how amazing Mikey DiPietro looks in a game, until Pettersson and Hughes are signed, they're the main story. The thing is that it feels like so many times, even in this show's short history, that we have to have the conversation of, well, we knew this was going to happen a long time ago, and it didn't have to go down like this. Like, I think back, the one that I always think back to is the whole conversation right before the playoff bubble, where there was a lot of talk about how the Canucks were basically trying to decide between keeping Brock Besser or Tyler Toffoli. And obviously the Canucks made a choice there, but the thing was, that was the name, like the decision-making process, they made probably the right choice on that. The thing is, if they had managed their cap space better, if they had done a better job at deciding where money was going to go and where to save it and where to not spend, they wouldn't have had to make that choice at all. They could have very easily had both of them. Yeah. And right now, the Canucks are in a situation where they very easily, if they wanted to, could have signed Pettersson and Hughes to long-term contracts, paying them as much money as they wanted, more or less, within reason, right? Maybe they can't pay them the full 20% of the cap that they would both potentially want, but they could at least pay them more or less in a blank check sort of fashion. And for however many years, the max amount of years you can get out of them. Right. They put themselves in a spot here where they can't do that, where they essentially are going to probably have to take a huge, huge risk of only getting 5 years out of two of their best players and walking them right into free agency. And if the team's not good enough by that time, you might have just lost out on your greatest core, the greatest core in franchise history, before they could even reach their full potential.
But have you ever considered that COVID exists and it only impacted the Canucks and only them?
Only the Canucks. That's right. That's right, everybody. God.
One of the things, the other bit of crummy news that is actually playing kind of in the Canucks' favor, and it's kind of funny. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny that for the second year in a row, or second season in a row, COVID is somehow bailing out the Canucks front office. Because if you guys don't know, Travis Hamonic is still not at training camp. Despite Jim Benning saying last Wednesday that Travis Hamonic would be here, they would be all 100% vaccinated, and he would be good to go. He's still not here. He's last reported still in Winnipeg. He's mulling over a personal situation, which, I mean, at this point, if you're Jim Benning or the Canucks organization, you gotta just basically say what's going on. Even if it's a personal matter, the speculation and the people that are doing their jobs by investigating what the issue is are just going to keep prying into it. And it's they're well within their right to do so, because you can't start out your training camp for the season by saying a player is going to be here and then him never show up. You can't just expect a media group like the one in Vancouver to just be like, yeah, okay, we're not going to question this. He's been the GM here for almost 10 years. Surely he would know that Thursday morning when Travis Hamonic didn't report that people were going to start asking questions. Like, you had to know.
It's like when you tell a toddler, hey, don't go in that closet. You're not allowed to go in that closet. Now, all that toddler's going to care about is what's in the closet. What do you got in there? Like, is there cookies? Is there like a bunch of toys?
I go in there?
Like, exactly. Like, it's very much a case of sometimes like you have to be just straight up with people, because otherwise it's just going to cause more problems later. And there was the whole thing about there was the Ben Kuzma article where he talked to Benning, and basically Jim Benning was like, I don't know. He was fired up. And you know what? I'll say this, like, I understand that, you know, if he's wants to defend his player, like, I get that that's something, like, if you're a GM, that is kind of something you should be doing. Like, you shouldn't be like, it is kind of your job to keep your protection on your players. But part of that protection also means saying, hey, the reason he's not here is because he's unvaccinated. That's why. Like, you don't just say he's dealing with a family issue. No, you have to be straight up about it. You're causing more issues, frankly, by not just being upfront about it, especially because, again, someone's going to find out, and people have found out already. Like, it's one of those cases where, again, we haven't, like, I think if you're here, like, even like most of the media people are being a little bit like careful about it, where they're not being like straight up, he's not here because he's unvaccinated. They're being like, it seems that way, but that's their way of saying, we basically know, but until they say something, we can't 100% tell you. We can only tell you with 99% certainty.
It's like because October 1st is the opt-out date. So basically
3 days.
All of the media, the best they can do is all signs are pointing to yes, but until the press release comes out October 1st confirming it, we can't confirm that this is like exactly what it is. So but the rampant speculation that Benning has a problem with, like, he's created it himself. Like, I almost wish, like, he just like he has all these guys' phone numbers. He should just be calling them and be like, hey, this is the situation, but I need you to not report this or go public with it. But you got the speculation has to stop, because I can't have people prying into like his personal life. He doesn't want a Toronto situation where I think it was Steve Simmons or whatever that somehow found out that Marner or Matthews had got COVID in Arizona, which is like a huge, like, I don't know how he found that out.
Yeah, I will say, like, so I remember people at the time being like, this is a HIPAA violation. It's like, well, no, that's not how HIPAA works. But yeah, like, he probably didn't find it in the, you know, you don't know Steve. I don't know Steve Simmons' sources, but you know, he probably, I don't know how he got that information, but it's probably interesting.
I can't imagine one of Austin Matthews' Arizona pals is like chumming up to Steve Simmons and DMing him, being like, "Oh, bro, Matthews has got COVID, but don't say anything." Like, there's no way that is happening on any planet. So I don't, you know, not that I'm accusing him of doing anything shady, like how he found this shit out.
Yeah,
no clue.
That was a very weird, that particular scenario was very weird. This is one of those cases where you could very easily shut it down. Like it because right now, like, it was either a case of either, you know, if you're Jim Benning, either say he's not, this is not a COVID issue, 100%, 0% chance, not a COVID issue, not a vaccine thing at all. Or you say, yes, it's a vaccine thing. Like, you just, you pick one, because either by trying to like skirt through the middle.
Line.
Yeah, exactly. By trying to like go right down the middle, be like, it's a family thing, and being as vague as you humanly can about it. Yeah, you're just opening, you're opening him, Travis Hamonic, up to more issues, frankly. And it's like, it's hard for me to question. I'm not sure how, I don't know what to really say about Hamonic in this situation, because there's not much we can say other than, you know, again, and I said this on Locked On, talking about it today or earlier today, which is just, you know, if you are listening, if you're somebody who's listening, please go get vaccinated. If you're not, like, that's
we've all said in every episode, please go get vaccinated. But like you said, the proper avenue here would be to just like take a positive stance instead of toe the line, because not only is he subjecting Travis Hamonic to some kind of like vague speculation that could damage his character, he's also doing himself and the organization no favors, because it looks like they're using like Hamonic's kid or his family issues as like a scapegoat to try and get around. I mean, if total speculation here, but say for example on October 1st they're like, yeah, Hamonic doesn't want to get vaccinated because he believes they're bad for his kids or whatever, so he's gonna opt out for the season. You can't like my brain is like melting just thinking of this whole situation. He's setting himself up to now be like, we're making the fan base turn on each other and our organization for like making like guilt tripping them into thinking he's like doing something out of the benefit of his kid. And then if it turns out he's like an anti-vaxxer and is, has some preconceived notions that it's bad for his kid, it's going to look really bad on Jim Benning or the org for trying to guilt trip everyone into thinking that these were all good intentioned holdouts or something. It's going to make him look terrible and the organization look terrible for getting mad at the public or the media for speculating on exactly what it turned out to be. So stop towing the line. To
certain people, it could look like you're trying to defend. If it turns out that he is not, and if it turns out that he's not, that he doesn't want the vaccine for anti-vax kind of reasons, it could look to some people like you went out of your way to defend a guy for an anti-vax player, and to protect an anti-vax player, which to a lot of people, especially right now, that's not a good look. They don't want to hear that. And I'm not saying that's how say you or I would necessarily like treat it, would necessarily like say it that way, but
it's hard to not view it like that, right?
Yeah, it's hard not to view it that way. And especially for other fans, they might not be as like willing to like look past that kind of thing. And for very good reason. Like people have lost lives over, like people have lost family members.
Lost family members. They've lost, grandparents. They've lost parents. They've lost brothers, sisters, right? Like, it's a very dicey situation.
That's the perfect way of putting it.
October 1st couldn't come sooner, mostly because like I'm sure you and I are both tired of speculating and seeing people tweet articles being like, oh, the rumor is currently this. Like, I don't want to see the speculation about this. I just want it confirmed.
Yeah, this just makes me sad. Like Pettersson, dealing with like say the Pettersson and Hughes thing, like that's hockey, that's sport, that just happens from time to time. That's part of the gig. This kind of stuff like this just makes you sad. It just doesn't, it's just disappointing. It's not fun to talk about. I really don't wish we didn't have to, but it's like, that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah. Like it's just a bummer.
To quote everyone's parents growing up, we're not mad. We're just disappointed. Which was the worst thing you could ever hear from any parent or teacher or whoever, any person you look up to. You heard that. You knew you were screwed.
Exactly.
But anyways, that's enough of the crummy news.
Although one thing we should kind of touch on as we roll into like actually talking about hockey stuff is what happens if he doesn't come back, and if he opts out. So essentially, should he opt out of this, or should he retire? That's been talked about. It's been talked about that he might retire. It's been talked about that he might opt out. And I believe, I think it's the Vancouver Hockey Now site reported yesterday that he's interested in that his camp is interested in moving him to a U.S. team, essentially, and that they'd be open to that. As far as the Canucks are concerned, if he's not going to play, which already is bad enough because, frankly, the Canucks' right side defense is in not a great spot right now. Yeah, it's not in a great spot right now.
It was not already good with Hamonic on the roster, and now with him gone, Brady Keeper injured, it's like getting into yikes territory.
Exactly. So if you're the Canucks, I mean, you're and he's not going to play. You're kind of hoping he retires, right? Like you're hoping that's the case here, right? So you get that full $3 million cap hit, right?
Because that, like you said earlier, getting Pettersson and Hughes signed a deal that like really lets you maximize the dollars they want, and maybe even on terms where you still retain some control. That extra $3 million can probably go a long way, and
Yeah.
They're probably not asking for it because I think what they would rather have is a $3 million right shot defenseman who's actually pretty like okay for their lineup. But yeah, like if he's gone, that right side is terrifying.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a name at you. Well, specifically, I'm going to throw a name at you that actually Rob Williams at Rob the Hockey Guy suggested in his article today as somebody is like who could be a potential replacement. I don't know what kind of a cap hit he would necessarily command right now, especially considering how close to the season we are. It might be decent, but Jason Demers is a name that's been talked about a couple times before. I don't know a lot about say his like underlying numbers, but I know quite a few people talk about him having like being pretty good, pretty okay in terms of like his possession metrics and his ability to not get caved in his own end of the ice. I think I've heard he's a decent defensive defenseman. I don't know what your thoughts are on the idea of say Demers coming to Vancouver.
You know what's very funny is that earlier today I was on CanucksArmy.com. Shout out to CanucksArmy.com. And one of the suggested articles on their site was an article from 2017 that was titled Jason Demers will not waive his no movement clause to go to Vancouver. And it was from 2017. I was like, this came out today. Someone must have asked him this. And I clicked it and it was like September or something or other 2017. I was like, oh, that's weird.
Time is the moral of today's CreaseCast, is time is a flat circle. That's the actual takeaway here. So what do you think about Thomas Vanek coming around, like coming to Vancouver this year?
Hear me out. Let's get Jaromir Jagr here. I think he's turned the clock back.
I think he can play right shot defenseman. Yeah, sure. You can. Who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Let's put him on D and see how he does. Yeah,
he doesn't skate that well.
And Tyler Myers at forward. Well. Yes, it's season 3 of the show, and we're still on that wagon.
Team CreaseCast is all for Tyler Myers at forward. Yeah, they can't do it now because he's their only. Yeah, he's their only viable right shot defenseman that they have, which is. I mean, why don't we get straight into the games, okay?
Yeah, let's talk about the game.
Canucks had preseason startup, and their first game was a bit of a conundrum because people were mad that the Seattle Kraken's first game in their history, preseason or not, wasn't broadcast on the main Sportsnet channel. I totally get the outrage. Apparently, like the Toronto Maple Leafs had like an intra-squad scrimmage that was broadcast on Sportsnet. They sure did.
They got
they can't broadcast this like
white game. It's like okay. Sometimes like I definitely think there are points I know some people will not like be saying this, but I do think there are some points in like here in Vancouver where we get a little bit too like crazy about the whole Toronto this, Toronto that media kind of thing. But when you do things like broadcast an inter-squad game for the Leafs on national television and then don't show the first exhibition game of literally a brand new NHL franchise
team. Like
I have no idea what you're doing. That's such an easy you will get so many viewers on a preseason game for that. Like I get I'm sure Toronto people are interested in whatnot in even in the inter squad games, but they can't be that interested in that. Like it's like the Toronto Montreal one. That's one thing. That's an actual preseason game between two different teams. That's an actual hockey game. It's not a scrimmage. And then you don't show. Like again, it's not even about the Canucks really. It's about the fact that you didn't show the damn Kraken on their first go.
The brand new franchise.
The first game, and they iced basically their whole NHL lineup, and you didn't show it.
So we'll get into that.
Wild stuff.
So the Canucks iced pretty much like the buildings of an AHL team.
More or less.
Artur Silovs was their starting goaltender. Danila Klimovich got top 6 time. Yolevi was in, Rathbone was in, Vinny Arsenault was in. Like it was pretty well just the AHL team versus a full-on NHL squad. Like that wasn't like the Kraken trying to get like a look at their AHL like players and see who fits. It was straight up, we are building our franchise. This is our squad. Like Giordano was out there. Eberle was out there. Like they rolled out the red carpet for their team in their debut.
They were smart enough to go, this is our first game in this market. Like, even if it's a game in Spokane,
gotta count.
we're gonna ice the best team we can and sell that thing out. Like, this is not and obviously I don't blame the Canucks for not like being like, whoa, we're gonna match you with everything we got right now, because frankly that'd be silly.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know what? I'll say this for the AHL guys. They held their own. They did great. They honestly did really great. Like, and maybe that's just because we're still scarred from the last time the Canucks played an expansion team in a preseason game, and they got smoked 9-4 by an AHL Golden Knights team.
Yeah,
that was embarrassing. That
was like a bad sign of things.
Oh my god, yeah. Season. I remember being like, oh, it's just the preseason. Who cares? And then I was so mad.
The game happened, and you were like, oh no.
I was livid. I was like, how did you lose so badly to the damn Golden Knights? And then it ended up being. Yeah. And then they ended up being a conference winner. So like, okay,
it made it okay. Maybe it made it okay. Maybe history will repeat itself, and Seattle will be a conference winner and go to the Cup final. Maybe.
Oh, why?
History will repeat itself.
God, I hope not. God, I hope not. That
would think about it. But if you didn't watch the game, the Canucks got out to an early lead. They were up 3-0. I think after the first period, or maybe
they went up
2-0, then 3-0 in the second, and then the wheels kind of fell off a bit. Seattle started getting it together.
I'd say we double check, but there's no box score from this game. I believe, just specifically because I think this was technically an exhibition game and not like an actual preseason game, which I don't know why there's a difference between those two. I don't know why there's like I don't understand why there's the NHL qualifies those as two different things, but here we are.
Still a hockey game featuring hockey teams. Like,
they're still working. Like, they're both teams are still figuring out their using it to figure out their rosters. They're not Though the Kraken did take it pretty seriously. Like, they came in with a mission.
Maybe they pulled like the stats team off of the Kraken Canucks game and made them work the Toronto Marlies or Toronto Maple Leafs inner squad game instead.
They're like, they got the NHLs in on it too. They're just like, we got the whole crowd, we got the whole gang here, and here's Amazon to film a second season of All or Nothing, which, by the way, I feel like we might have to watch just out of morbid curiosity. We might have to do like a watch along, like at some point on our
It'll be
Discord or something.
October 1st is going to be spicy because that drops and the opt-out date is then. So we're going to have a lot to talk about then. But first game.
Who stood out for you?
First game standouts for me, Danila Klimovich, number one. The fact that he's playing like we're saying, we're not over exaggerating when we're like, they basically played an NHL team. They literally played the Seattle Kraken's NHL squad, and it was a bunch of guys. Yeah, maybe two are going to be like their AHL team or something like that.
Yeah,
but
that's it. It
was basically an AHL squad versus like considerable vets in an NHL defense. And
Philip Grubauer started that game, and Chris Drieger finished it. Like, that's their 1 and 2 goaltenders. That was 100% an NHL lineup. Like, no questions, hands down.
Yeah. So for me, the three big standouts to me were Klimovich, Silovs, and Rathbone, and all for pretty well the same reasons. Klimovich, because he was holding his own, looking pretty speedy and showing some offensive pop against an NHL team in his North American debut. Silovs, because I don't know anything about him except for what David Quadrelli talks about on the Canucks Conversation, and most of the time I tune out. But this, like, when he played, I was like, you know what? I know a few things about him. Something about the glove being out, being active, an active glove. I don't know what he's talking about half the time.
I mean, you never ask me these things, but I'm a goalie and everything. But I mean, whatever.
But let me just backtrack and say, goaltending is the worst position in the world, and I think Mackenzie Blackwood kind of proved that today with his really insensitive remarks. But anyway, Silovs looked really good again against an NHL team. Like, he was holding his own against NHL shooters. The wheels fell off after the Canucks gave up a power play goal, and then he got shot in the fucking throat with a shot. Like, I don't care if they lost 5-3 because he was great up until when they got like the third goal past him. It's like, who cares? It's an AHL squad, and he was holding his own really well for a kid who's only played
one
games.
pro game, I think, before this.
I think he played.
Yeah.
He played one for the Mice,
and then
last year.
Yeah, I think he played one and then came clean and did cleanup duty in another. Like, I think that's it.
And I think he may have backed up DiPietro or Demko for the Canucks last year, but like he didn't actually play or do anything. But still, barely played NA game or North American games at the pro level in the last year and a half, and he held his own. Looked great. I was thoroughly impressed, and his skill in that game makes me very excited for how the AHL Abbotsford Canucks goalie situation is going to shake up, because we'll get it in the second game when it comes to the other goaltender. But the third most impressive player for me was Jack Rathbone. Started really brutally on a pairing with Luke Schenn. I thought Luke Schenn looked really bad. He looked very slow.
He had a tough night.
Just passes were awful. He tried to play physical, but it just kept making more work for Jack Rathbone to try and make up for it by regaining possession. But he looked great, and he scored the opening goal. It'll go down in history as the first person to score a goal against the Seattle Kraken. So he's got that going for him in a meaningless game, like whatever. But it'll be some weird Trivial Pursuit quote or fact somewhere. But for you, what were your standouts?
Honestly, the guys you mentioned were all pretty much right in there. I think I will say, just shout out to Brock Besser for his goal in the first period. I was so, like, just seeing him like tee up that shot on the power play was such a signature Brock Besser goal that it was really like a moment. It's like that moment where you really are like, hockey's back. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I pay to see. Like, this is the thing. This is it.
How many times last year too where people were like, man, we just need to see Brock Besser ripping that one-timer again. Like, his shot looks off or whatever. His wrist shot's always been great. It's always been lethal, but seeing him pop that one-timer, you're just like, oh, baby.
That, again,
Brock Besser,
on an NHL goalie. That was not on a preseason. That's not on a guy going to the AHL. That's on Philip Grubauer, who he's probably going to play 5 times this year. So that's important. That's big.
All 5.
All 5. Are there only 5? I thought there were maybe like 6 in there. Either way, doesn't really matter. But Grubauer's probably going to play in a lot of those games because they're fighting. They're going to be fighting for playoff spots this year, probably. You mentioned Rathbone. I know we're going to talk about him a little bit in the second game because there were a couple guys who played both games, particularly on defense. That first goal, where Rathbone, again, this is a defenseman. He gets a breakaway and just tucks it in. It's a beautiful shot, and then does it again in the shootout, in the meaningless shootout after the game. It doesn't matter, even if it is like unimportant. Like, that was good. He looks very comfortable for a guy who has, again, this is a case where I think for most of the guys we mentioned today, guys who don't have a lot of experience at the pro NHL level, going up against guys who they shouldn't be able to necessarily keep up with or necessarily be already well equipped to play against, and doing just fine and looking like they belong right in there. Like Silobs is another guy where I think for the first half of that game, he ended up getting they ended up doing the usual preseason thing where Spencer Martin came in the third period and took over. He was tracking the puck very well. He seemed very much like he belonged at the NHL level in that game. There was the one point where he just flat out robbed, I think it was Jordan Eberle, like right on the goal line. Yeah. He took a sure goal away. Right. And right on the goal line. It was an incredible stop. He looked very there were obviously moments where he was caught a little bit, more like flat-footed or had like his position just that inch off where, that difference between an AHL shooter going up against you and an NHL shooter, that guy can just find that goal a little bit better.
Right.
He did very well. And Klimovich is another guy where, again, you and I have been really on the whole, but he's going to the Q, but he's going to the A. But while still always talking about the fact that he wants to play NHL minutes, he did pretty good. Like, he looked, he didn't look out of place against NHL competition. There was the one play that I really liked from him. It didn't amount to a goal or anything, but it was a play in the Seattle zone. I think that their line had been out for quite a bit at this point in the game, or like on that shift. And he's like in the corner. He's kind of near the corner. He ends up winning a puck battle after like there had already been just a flurry of chances on the Seattle net. And he has the foresight to, instead of trying to just try and set up for another pass again, he thinks he takes like a quick kind of like far side shot at Chris Driedger, and just to see if he can get a rebound to pop out. And sure enough, Driedger's not expecting it, and it immediately just right into the slot for somebody, and there's just no one could get a handle on it to get the second shot away.
Yeah.
But that was one of those things where it's like, that's a smart play. Like that case of, you're already tired. You know, you're probably not going to get another good look at the shot before they take the puck away. Just throw it on net and see what happens. Like, see if you can just get something to go, especially in that kind of a close game. I like that from him. I like the idea that he's just trying to he turned what could have been a very nothing play into something, into a scoring chance very quickly. And that's kind of what I'm looking for from him.
Yeah, the obvious things that he does need to work on, like he does tend to puck watch a bit. Like when he does have possession, like he's very dynamic, and you can tell like he's looking for ways he can turn nothing into a scoring chance. Like that's great. But like the board battle stuff, like he really needs to work on that. Like I noticed in the neutral zone and the offensive zone, like he's pretty much like he's not engaging with his body, he's not engaging with his stick either. He's just kind of like I should just be standing here and hope and try and kick the puck or block passing avenues. Like it's a very raw instinct.
He's clearly used to being the guy who somebody else is going to fish that out for him to shoot with.
That's what it looked like. It looked because if you guys don't know, he played last season in the Belarusian men's second tier league, which is like a men's pro league. But obviously, when you're an 18-year-old who is barely 19, I don't even know if he's turned 19 yet. He might not.
He's young. He might not.
He's really young anyway.
He's fresh, very fresh.
Yeah, so that's why like the likelihood of him actually making the NHL team's pretty low.
Yeah,
AHL's pretty low. He can go to the queue and like light it up, but he's shown enough like raw skill where you're like, you know, I could maybe see him getting like an 8-game look in the NHL just purely out of like that curiosity. Raw talent, out of curiosity. Yeah. Like they have his rights, they have him on the contract. He can still be on waivers if they he'll still be waiver exempt even if they throw him to the queue. Yeah. Why not?
You don't burn his ELC if you play him in 9 games or less. Go for it. Yeah. Give it a look. I don't know. I don't know how that works if he goes to the AHL. Like I don't know if that's the same rules. Like if that rule
I think if he goes to the A, that will like it's games accrued, I believe. So I'm pretty sure if he plays like AHL games, like it counts as pro experience, and therefore his ELC will start to tick. Like that's why Jonah Gadjevic's was delayed by 2 years. It's because he didn't play any games.
I wonder if there's like a situation where they could go, they keep him, say, for 4 games at like the NHL, 5 games at the A, and then go with him to the Q, or if that's too much shuffling, if that's a little too much shuffling.
It might be. I think for like I feel like Travis Green would be the type where he just wants to get like a good look. And I think like the management staff too would be like, you know, we can put him against the A, but it won't really matter. Like, because he's not going to be there for 3 years anyway. So let's just see what he can do in the NHL.
Yeah. Like honestly, the fact that we're even like talking about this as a serious possibility is frankly marks on him, like a check mark next to him. Because again, we were very quick to say, like in the last couple of shows, we're both like, yeah, there's no way. Like it's nice that he's got the confidence in himself to get that far, but no, there's no chance that he's going to play any NHL games this year. But here he is actually making a real solid effort to try and make that team right away. And that's good on him. Like, I want to see that compete from him wherever he goes. Hopefully that's just his style and who he is as a player. Maybe he'll go to if he goes to the QMJHL with that kind of work ethic, he's going to absolutely rip that league to shreds. Like he's that good. He's that competitive. It's great to see.
Yeah. He'll be a fun one to watch. When we get into game 2, which was a bit more competitive, I say, for the NHL roster for the Canucks.
Yes.
Not at all for the Flames. They were icing about as rookie and inexperienced as a team as it can possibly get, with the exception of like Brett Ritchie and Andrew Mangiapane. Otherwise, it was basically the Flames Stockton Heat team versus the most of the NHL team. The Canucks still were rolling out a lot of kids trying to prove themselves. That tends to be their preseason MO, where they have like a line and a half of NHL stars where you know where they're going to end up, and a pairing or two of guys you know are going to be in the NHL. That's kind of their MO. They love to test and see who's going to, earn a shot, right? Earn that final NHL roster spot. And I think game 2 had the most traction and movement both up and down for players proving themselves or maybe not proving themselves worthy of an NHL roster spot. So we'll start with you this time, since I went first last time. Just some standouts for you from the game 2 game. Or actually, sorry, I guess we should recap it. Canucks won 4-2. It was kind of close a little bit towards the end when the Flames got within 1 goal, but Canucks regained a 2-goal lead off of a gorgeous snipe from Tanner Pearson, of all people. And Michael DiPietro stood on his head a bit, provided some highlight reel saves down the stretch. Overall, it was a fun game to watch, and a lot of young guys out there to prove themselves. So for you, Lachlan, some of your standouts from that game.
Standouts from that game. I'll start with the fact that with the actual crowd in attendance at that game, because first time the Canucks have played in front of a home crowd since 2020 or like March 2020. That's pretty great to see. Like, it was good to have fans.
Crazy.
As like, there was we were all making fun of the whole, they charged too much for tickets for this Abbotsford game.
They sure did.
They sure did. They did. No doubt about it. But the crowd made up for the lack of numbers pretty well. Like, they were loud, they were engaged, they were having a good time. They got pretty loud. I think Daniel Wagner was tweeting about how the crowd got, because he was in the building, the crowd got up and going after that Tanner Pearson shot at the end. Like, that was a late beautiful winner. I definitely want to talk. I mean, Rathbone again looked very good. I think the standout for me was, I think, Connor Garland looked very good. Connor Garland is a guy who I really, I loved the first goal of the game that he scored, I think was such a good example of what he brings to the Canucks. Like, it was very much a case of this. He gets the puck. He skates in, he gets the first shot, and then battles his way to that second shot, to that second rebound, and puts it in. That's exactly the kind of like mixture of like good offensive minded abilities and his tenacity in terms of like being able to battle defenders around the net is that he was brought in to do. So the fact that he came in and scored that kind of a goal right out of the gate is, I think, bodes very well for him in Vancouver.
Yeah.
And then another goalie standout, really, Mikey DiPietro. He was phenomenal. Like, and another case of a guy who hasn't played a lot. I mean, you and I talked about plenty last season, how he didn't play. He played 1 game. He played 1 AHL game all year. This is a potential goalie of the future that you only got into 1 game. That can't be good. And then he comes into this game, and you're probably like, he's going to be a little raw. He hasn't had real game action in a very long time. It's been pretty slow going for him. He was phenomenal. He got everything he was missing last season all out in 1 game. Like, there was the one play in front of the net. He makes that stop right in front of the net. Andrew Mangiapane starts digging at the rebound, and then he basically just bowls into DiPietro. Like, he got all the game action he missed last season
pretty much
out of the way in 1 game. He made multiple huge stops, especially like late in the game. He had a couple game saving stops, even though they were up by 2. Like, there were a couple plays in there where he was just phenomenal, and being able to just literally just save the game for the Canucks at multiple points in that game. I think that's huge for him. Obviously, this season is going to be big for him. That's his home rink. That's going to be his home rink for a lot of this year. And potentially all of it, depending on what they do with Jaro Halak come March. But yeah, he was incredible. What did you think of, and who stood out for you?
Garland, same for me. That's top of my list. He had a pretty sleepy preseason camp to begin with. Like, you didn't really hear his name pop up a lot. Apparently, he struggled in the bag skate, which I mean, take it as it is. Like, whatever. It's just a fitness test. But he didn't really stand out. No one was really talking about him. So I was like, kind of like, okay, is he going to start showing something? But I love to watch him play, man. He covers a lot of ice with his skating. Good speed, good tenacity on the forecheck, always hounding on loose pucks. And that goal of his where he gets the initial shot and follows it up with the rebound and scores. You love to see. You love to see it. Yeah. Other standouts, I thought Podkolzin did pretty good for like a brand new rookie. English isn't his first language. Like that's a really tough thing to do when you're adapting to not only North American ice, but you're doing it with an entire team. Not a single person speaks Russian besides Danila Klimovich, who isn't in the lineup and is also a rookie. So not very helpful. And you're tasked with being on a line with two like credible veterans of the game. Connor Garland's still pretty young. He hasn't really gotten that much NHL experience, but he knows how to score and knows how to succeed in the league. JT Miller's been around forever and he's a veteran, but that's like a very intimidating thing to come into as a brand new rookie who pretty much is just trying to learn how to play a new style of game. I noticed in the third period, he started playing either like he was like tired or if he was starting to have doubts in his own game or something, because thanks to Chris Faber of Canucks Army, we all know his ice time situation in the KHL. If he'd make a mistake, he would be stapled to the bench for the rest of the game. And so he had a few moments where he fumbled on some passes, kind of threw it away when he maybe didn't need to. And he kind of like eased off a bit. He'd still like, hound on pucks and like, engage in battles and like do some really good things. But you could tell just by the way he was playing, like it was almost like a concerted effort because he was scared of making further mistakes. But Travis Green doesn't really care about that. We all know that because of Niels Hoglander. He lets the young guys make mistakes and learn on the fly. So for a first game, preseason, regardless if it was an AHL competition, I thought he acquitted himself very well. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he does, say, on Friday versus the Flames again. Hopefully that's more of like an NHL team versus an NHL team and not like the, someone icing their AHL squad versus the other, like just so you can kind of get a real sense of like balanced competition. Other than those two, though, obviously there's Rathbone because he was, a fucking stud trying to carry whatever pairing he was on at all times, both defensively and offensively. Jonah Gadjevich was my final standout from the night. I thought there is the asterisk, right? Because we know the Flames played mostly their Stockton AHL team.
Right.
Granted, Gadjevich is used to playing against AHL teams, so it's good that he acquitted himself with a very impressive performance against guys that he's, he should be used to playing against. And, his speed looked good. He was getting opportunities wheeling down the wings like a power forward and just like out muscling guys for loose pucks on the half wall. And he had a great setup to help Chase Waters score his first goal. Like, of all people, Chase Waters is the first guy to score for the Canucks. Like, that is so great. And it's not Gadjevich just standing at the front of the net doing tips. It's him utilizing a side of his game that I think doesn't get nearly enough credit. I've always said in my game recaps that one of his best attributes is as a playmaker. He's just not deployed as such because of how good he is at using his size to maintain the slot or the net front. So that was great to see. There's a lot of uncertainty with like the forward group, and the fact that someone like him, who a lot of people wrote off after last season, had such a strong performance.
Yeah, it's especially interesting hearing you talk about Gadjevich because for anyone who necessarily is newer to the show, you're somebody who's talked a lot about how you feel Gadjevich is has potential, but you've had your critiques. You've had your
Right.
critiques and you had your notes about how he plays. So it's good. It's good to hear that you felt he looked good and that you feel like there's something there from him. Especially like I take that more into account as far as what he potentially is possible, what's capable for him. If you're liking what you're seeing out of him so far and stuff like that, like there's potential, there's hope for him that he finds that part of his game and that they might see that more often from him, especially playing closer to home here now for him.
Yeah, and I think it was also great that it wasn't just like on an individual level where he was having a good game and everyone around him sucked. Like I really thought him and Will Lockwood, like they work together as like a duo. We've heard that phrase a lot around camp, is the idea that Travis Green uses duos for his preseason on figuring out his line combinations, his team setup. He likes to use duos and, kind of match around those. I think in the AHL, Lockwood and Gadjevich had like a ridiculous goal share together. They had, I don't know, like 17 on ice goals for and only 4 against, and like a 70% Corsi rating. Like they, for whatever reason, just gel together when they're on the ice. And I don't know if Natural Stat Trick tracked last night's game, but it felt like when they had their moments of forechecking in the offensive zone, like they got a lot of good chances and a lot of good setups. Maybe they were missed shots or whatever, but they still generated a lot. And I think that's because Gadjevich's skating has improved quite a bit. Like I was thoroughly surprised at how well he was doing at keeping pace with Will Lockwood on end-to-end rushes, like 3-on-2s. Like last season, it looked more like he was really struggling to keep up on rushes, but he looked fine. And that bodes well for him. He had like a great quote after the game where he was basically like, I'm not paying attention to what happens next. I'm just trying to make the team. He's like, I lost weight. I worked on my skating to try and, boost my speed. And it shows. Yeah, he looks great. Obviously you'd want to see him like maybe get time on the power play or penalty kill, but that's up to the coaching staff and whether they actually view him as a viable bottom 6 option. Lockwood has been getting looks on the penalty kill, so maybe
that's another guy who we should mention is Lockwood. We haven't touched on him yet, but Lockwood has been very good. He hasn't had, I don't think he has any points, but he's been like a standout through all of training camp and all the preseason so far. He's been very good.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a problem with the bottom 6. Like I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but their bottom 6 guys, like usually they like guys with speed who, can corral the puck and like do something with it. But a lot of the guys in their bottom 6 auditions right now that are struggling to actually control the puck and do something with it. So I love Will Lockwood's speed. He's all over the place. He's throwing his body. He's just reckless abandon, but he's never really touching the puck. But because he's attacking so aggressively with hits or body checks or just like engaging in board battles, it's allowing players like Chase Waters or Jonah Gadjevich to pick up the puck and do something with it. So it's very interesting that, Lockwood may not have like the puck possession time, but he's still seeing like the results from his efforts. Whereas say that Matthew Highmore or Zach McEwen, who were on a line last night against the Flames, never touched the puck. Like just maybe once or twice,
like a quick pass. A
quick pass, or maybe they'd enter the offensive zone, they'd dump it in, or they'd like take like a low percentage shot from the outside and it would get gloved down and that would be it. But otherwise, there was no cycling with that line. They're constantly chasing the play. And if I'm the coaching staff, I'm going, okay, outside of penalty killing, you're useless to me if you're just going to be chasing the play.
Right.
And that was kind of their critique of Adam Gaudette last year when
it's true.
He was just chasing the puck all the time, never had possession. And because he's only known as a shooter and a scorer, if you're always chasing the play, then what good are you? And so I look at those two and like guys like Phil Giuseppe, who also had a really great game against Kraken. Like he played really good. And in that one game, I was kind of like, I think he's like a sure thing now on the 4th line over McEwen, over Highmore. Like that was just my instinct off of one game because of how well he did against the NHL team.
And they're looking for a whole fourth line right now because they only because Sutter's not here. Mott is that's an interesting one. Sutter we haven't even heard a lot from Sutter right now. Mott is in Vancouver and training, but he's hurt. And Justin Bailey got we talked about Justin Bailey on the last show with COVID and everything. But they're looking for a whole fourth line. And for Phil DiGiuseppe has taken the ball on that and ran with it so far. He looks very good. And he also, to be fair, he also has the most NHL experience, I think, out of the group fighting for that position. But doesn't matter. He looked good. He looked good against a quality NHL team. What did you think about OEL? Because OEL also was named first star of the game. Which I thought was a bit weird. That was a bit odd.
He had a couple assists.
He was good.
Sure, he had 3 points, but it was like
he was good.
They were like, I don't know. I
thought DiPietro should have been it. Should have been number one. Of course. Like that was just my thought.
So I think every single time I watched him in the 2019-2020 season, he was always like a star because the way the guys make saves, they're always so very acrobatic and fun. I think I had the tweet last night being like Michael DiPietro makes goaltending interesting because everything is so like wild and like fun, even though I'm sure Ian Clark is in the stands just going like, what are you doing? Like, why are you sprawling and like flailing your body around? Like, I'm sure he hates that, but it's so fun to watch. But yeah, in regards to OEL, didn't deserve first star. DiPietro was at least a 2. I really think Jack Rathbone should have got first star. That guy, everyone knows he's an offensive defenseman. Everyone knows he's got like a great pass. He's got great skating. He's got great reads in the defensive zone as well. But he's added this facet of his game, especially in last night's game against the Flames, where he was just working his bag off in the defensive zone to regain controlled possession. It wasn't like Luke Shen or Tucker Poolman just throwing the body around, trying to knock guys over and then, get a pass out to the forward.
Yeah.
Jack Rathbone is battling to dispossess guys and then wheel away with the puck and try and break out of the zone himself with his skating or with a controlled pass through the neutral zone. All on his own, every single shift. He's basically being like, I can do it all. You can trust me to be on your second pair or third pair guys. And I think he might have cemented his place because he looked fucking good.
He looked very good. Oh, and Rathbone looked very good. And, there was like that one set where he made a really good defensive stop in his own end. And then Tyler Myers also did the same thing. So also made a good defensive stop. So who knows? Maybe that's a pairing that works. Like, you never know. I had my doubt, which would be shocking. But
which would be shocking because we talked about it, I think, last season and this season. We're like, they don't seem to have any chemistry, even though all the stats say they were great offensively together and at preventing scoring chances. But it was just like the eye test says it shouldn't work.
Gel. Yeah, no. Yeah, but they look fine. Like Tyler Myers was good last night. Like he looked good last night. There was a couple plays where he got somebody just hurt him twice in the same play. You felt bad for him. He just got
there was face. Then he got
a puck to the leg. Something. Yeah, I think he hit a puck hit him while he was getting on a block or something. But yeah, they looked okay they look pretty good as a pairing. And then with OEL, I think OEL was a star of the game. Like I agree that he should have maybe been number 1, but again, preseason, who cares?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But
the fact that he was considered is great news.
Yeah, I at least as far as a preseason debut is concerned, if that's what you're gonna see out of OEL, he looked fine. He looked pretty good. He was. Some of the stuff about, some of the worries that we might have had about him after the bag skate thing. He looked totally comfortable. He was making good crisp passes. He had a great tribute to Alex Edler with that perfect drop pass. That was to Tanner Pearson, I believe.
Yeah, for the goal.
Who just ripped it for that final goal. That was very classic. Like the fact that he's wearing 23 and then that was such a it was one of those. like, but also like you're sad. Like you're just sad. You're like, dang, that
so
used to be
weird.
Eddie.
It was so weird watching the number 23 skating so fast. And I was like, this doesn't seem right because I wear glasses because I can't see. And every time I look down, it just looks like Edler, but like he dyed his like goatee brown.
Yeah,
it's so really jarring.
It's really weird seeing 23 passing the puck to 8 and instead of Chris Tanev and Alex Edler, it's Connor Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Yeah,
it's such a weird sight like to see, but the two new big acquisition guys look pretty good. They look good in that game. Obviously, you want to see what they can do against a more NHL ready lineup because they didn't play in the Seattle game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as far as first impressions go, I liked what I saw from those two.
Yeah, it was it's exactly what like Canucks fans kind of needed, like if there was any concern, because we've heard all about like OEL's like skating, his pivoting ability, and like how badly he'd regressed in Arizona over the last couple of years. It was against AHL Stockton Heat. I've said it 100 times already, but
yeah,
at the very least, he looked all right. And sometimes that's all you need.
Everything we're seeing here is first impressions. It's all, in some cases there are more like dire circumstances than others, which I'm sure we're gonna talk about here in a second.
Yeah.
But you don't want to make too big a deal about what you're seeing in the first 2 preseason games of the year, but this is what teams are doing, right? Like teams are using this to make their final choices on who's going to play and who's not. And obviously Garland and Ekman-Larsson aren't in any worries about not making the team or anything. Yeah. But if there's one thing we know very well here in Vancouver, it's foreshadowing. And how often the Canucks have seen like just a foreshadowing of just the worst possible events sometimes. So when you get a first impression that comes off well from a player, you like that. Like that's a good thing. That's very good for you for us. We're very superstitious around here.
It's almost as if there was another famous overpaid Swedish player who made a debut and it went as badly as the rest of his time in the organization went.
Yeah, just
weird how that went.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's so weird how that happens.
Yeah, but no, it's a good weekend for the Canucks games, regardless of losses and wins. Just a lot of good takeaways. But I guess we'll get into the player stock status because that's kind of what matters the most. Is that like regardless of wins or losses, like obviously our perceptions may have changed on some players. So I guess we'll start off like just some players that you think their stock rose over the weekend.
I mean, we've touched on a few of them already. Like Rathbone was one. Like here's the thing, right? Like last week we were talking about Rathbone, like he was fighting for spot number 6 or spot number 7 even. Now right now, I think everybody has him penciled in
some people have him
in pen in your top 4 because he's just that good. He's looked just that good through 2 games. I have no doubt in my mind that Rathbone, the Canucks are better with Jack Rathbone on the ice than they are without him. They're very clearly, in my mind, a better team with him than without him. And I don't see, and you would have the mental gymnastics you'd have to do to rationalize sending him to Abbotsford versus starting him in your opening night lineup right now is not worth it. And I don't think Travis Green's going to do that. So I think his stock has rose quite a bit. And I think he's going to get a lot more opportunities in certain aspects, especially on things like special teams to start the year than we might have expected him to get coming into training camp.
Yeah, he's like a beneficiary of Quinn Hughes still not being re-signed because with Hughes out, no matter how long that's going to be, that's an entire preseason where he or Oliver Ekman-Larsson are manning power play 1 and power play 2. And so he has all the opportunity in the world to cement himself as a guy that they can't leave off of their roster. And even without it, like I'm still convinced like he's like the second best left shot guy on their team.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not second, third.
At the very least, at the very least, he's there. And then I would throw in, I think you got to throw in, you mentioned Di Giuseppe in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think you throw him into the mix as well on that one.
Yeah.
As far as the defense is concerned, I mean, as far as the rest of the defense is concerned, I think it's mostly just Rathbone is the standout there. I think
Brad as well.
Brad Hunt, I admittedly
didn't.
Yeah, I admittedly didn't notice Brad Hunt too much in that first game, but honestly, maybe that's kind of that's his vibe. Like that might just be the kind of player he is. Like if you don't want to note, like there are some players you don't want to notice. Like if they're just out there doing their job, having a clean game, and you maybe don't think about them all too much. That's sometimes a good thing for them. I don't know. You might be looking for something different than I was. But just, like Brad Hunt didn't do any, there was no point where I was like, oh, Brad Hunt looked terrible on that. Like, and that's fine. Yeah, exactly. There was no point in that game. And frankly, that's more important to me in some ways is I am more comfortable with a guy who you maybe don't notice as much rather than a guy you're clearly blatantly seeing making mistakes. So Brad Hunt would be in there as well.
I would even, because most people are saying apparently spent most of his time in Minnesota on the right side as a left shot defenseman. I could very much see like a world where like somehow he plays on the right side with, OEL or whoever it is, Levy, like whatever. If Hughes, for example, is not signed until like a week or two inside the season, I could very well see it, because one of my players who I'll get into for the stock status that dropped, I'll explain my logic. But otherwise, I think that the risers are pretty straightforward. It's like the forward groups that, maybe surprised and did more to establish that they're really working for the job. So that would be like the Klimoviches, the Di Giuseppes, the Gadjeviches, the Lockwoods. And then I guess the amount of guys whose stock like really rose is a lot smaller than I would say the group that saw their stock just go way down. Like that, like and that's more I think that's a lot partially to do with the fact that there are a lot of like players that are cemented into that lineup. Like this is a team that out of the last few Canucks teams, this is probably the one with the most cemented NHL roster right out of the gate on what they're bringing to the table. Basically, all that they're looking for right now is 3 forwards and 1 defenseman, essentially. Like that's all the spots available this time around. And so, I feel like that the group of people that really did not adhere themselves to the coaching staff is probably a lot wider than the group that really made a good impression. Yeah, fair enough. I think also it's an issue where this comes up a lot, where people are like, oh, the guys that have NHL experience coming into this camp, like maybe they don't work as hard to try and keep their role because they know like how to not blow your wad in the first few weeks of a preseason camp. Like you just can't go that hard because the season is long. Whereas these young guys are like gung ho. Let me just prove myself as soon as possible. The rest of the season can wait. It's just about getting in rather than staying in. And so naturally they look a lot better than like the Highmores of preseason, because Highmore's used to having the spot guaranteed for him because he can penalty kill. One of the most interesting things about the game last night was that after Highmore had a shift on the team's penalty kill, Zach McEwen got a shift on the penalty kill. And typically he wasn't a good penalty killer at the AHL level, and he never did it for Travis last year in the NHL. So this to me tells me that Highmore isn't cemented in his role, and the coaching staff are basically saying to Highmore, we don't know if you've actually got a spot here, so we're going to audition every single forward to see what their penalty killing ability looks like, because you're not giving us much otherwise. That being said, one of my guys whose stock status dropped over the weekend was Zach McEwen.
I think both of them did easily put both of those guys in that category. Matthew Highmore in particular was the one where I was like, there were moments where I noticed Zach McEwen for doing good things, for doing okay things. Matthew Highmore is a player, like, and I know I just talked about how sometimes you don't want to notice a player or whatnot. Matthew Highmore is a player that I should be noticing when he's out on the ice. I didn't once. There wasn't one case where I was like, wow, he really stood out and really made a conscious, smart play there. There wasn't one point where I watched him. I'm like, oh, this is a guy I want. I don't even remember him much from training camp. Like, I don't feel like he's been as involved for a guy who, yeah, like you mentioned, probably is absolutely should be fighting for that fourth line spot, especially with so many options open. I thought Alex Chiasson was much better and has a much better chance right now than him. That's actually a guy I should have mentioned in the stock status right now. I think Alex Chiasson has a chance to make this team right now. I actually have him
in my fallers.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. That's going to be interesting. I had Chiasson because Chiasson got power play time. He got power play time. I believe he had an assist on one of the goals. He was on one of the goals in that second game. He looked okay. And right now, as far as I'm looking, if it wasn't for the fact that he's only on a PTO and not on a contract right now, I like him on that fourth line much better than I like Highmore or even McEwen for that matter. You mentioned McEwen. You mentioned McEwen. Just like McEwen's in such a weird spot because I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just this, he doesn't mesh in this coaching staff. Like he doesn't mesh on this, like on the spots available to him. We talked about it last year a lot, how you have to be kind of you have to have that jack of all trades mentality and ability to play on a third or fourth line for the Canucks. You just kind of have to fill a spot when it comes up. Whether that's penalty kill, whether that's power play guy, whether that's blocking shots guy, you have to fill that. Sometimes your way in is to fill that specialist role for a bit, and then they might carve out a bigger full-time regular role that fits you better. McEwen doesn't really have that. I don't think there's a spot where I look at him where I'm like, that he's a good fix in this particular department. He's kind of just there. He's kind of just takes up ice time. I don't know. I like to believe he could do more, but I'm just not seeing it from him right now.
I think a lot of Canucks fans like the journey that he's taken, because not a lot of guys come out of the Maritimes AAA junior as an overager, undrafted to the AHL in like 2 years and then suddenly in the NHL. That's a great win for the organization. The fact that he's there, he worked hard for it. Like that season where he basically skated his bag off to prove that he had the work ethic to try and make the show. Like that's a great story. He's had a ton of adversity.
Want to root for success.
Root against it. Like it's great that he's there. Unfortunately, as the time has gone on in the NHL, it's kind of shown that like he's fast enough to keep up with the game, but I don't think he has the IQ to actually do anything with it. And as I was saying earlier, like he spends a lot of his games chasing play. It's a lot of, I'm going to have the How I Met Your Mother glass shatter moments. Yeah. But next time you watch him play, count every shift where he is like a stride behind a forward possessing the puck and he's one-handing his stick and just going like this and trying to bat it there and hoping he knocks it off. But that's all he can do. That's all he did when he was on a line with Gaudette in the previous year. He's just not fast enough to disrupt, and he doesn't really battle along the boards either. Like he throws hits, but he doesn't really engage in board battles. Like he's a perimeter kind of player. So I just don't think he has a place, and maybe he finds a role as a penalty killer over DiGiuseppe or Lockwood or Gadjevich or whatever. And he's just there because they know his work ethic's really high, but he's got to show something in these preseason games where you can at least justify him being there. And I didn't see it in the game yesterday. Same thing with Highmore. Like he skates like the wind, but there's nothing coming from it. Like the McEwen Highmore line was centered by Justin Dowling, who's a very speedy, like probably like a credible fourth line center at the NHL level. And they did nothing together. It looked like the three of them were battling each other and their opponents to get noticed.
They were an odd mix.
Terrible. Yeah. And when a trio of an AHL contract in Chase Waters, Will Lockwood, and Jonah Gadjevich is possessing the puck and cycling and following the play at a better rate than three credible, established players at the NHL level can, it's a bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that they were everything that you want the fourth line. That the Waters, Lockwood, Gadjevich line was everything you'd want a fourth line to be in an NHL game. Like they did exactly what they were asked to do in that role. Whereas that group that you mentioned, they just couldn't find it. They couldn't click. They weren't clicking. They didn't have that. They just weren't able to get that separation or make that one play that could potentially make them stand out. It was very much a case of blink and you'll miss it with them.
Okay, now the defense for the Fallers.
Oh boy, this is a tough one.
The first one is going to make Wyatt Arndt really mad because this is his boy. I really thought Luke Schenn looked bad in that first game against Seattle, to the point where I was like, oh no, the Canucks right side is fucking doomed. Because with Hamonic potentially out, their right side is Myers, Poolman, and then Schenn, or
That's
guess
it. And Hunt. Maybe.
Hunt if he plays on his offside. And then, there's Madison Bowie in the AHL, most likely.
Yeah.
But that is terrifying. And Kyle Burrows as well, who I think actually acquitted himself pretty good. I think he did. I think he actually had a pretty underrated game and looked like a pretty decent seventh defenseman option.
Yeah,
he was playing with Rathbone as well.
Yeah,
you know why? You know why he was playing with Rathbone? Because Luke Schenn had such a bad first period that they switched up the D pairings for periods 2 and 3 of that first game. Yeah, that's how bad he looked. He looked so slow.
It was a tough first game for Schenn for sure. I wonder a little bit, just personally, if maybe that was just a case of him getting a lot tougher matchups against an NHL roster, because again, he was the only guy I think who had say 100+ NHL games on that defense in that first game. So he was probably getting paired up. I think he was getting he was out on the ice a lot against the Eberle, Schwartz, and I want to say Morgan Geekie was that first line.
Yeah.
Out there. I think he was getting a lot of those matchups in that first year, but at the same time, Jack Rathbone was also out there for those shifts and he looked fine. So that's
why he's a big faller for me.
That's why it's a concern. Yeah.
By comparison, he looked pretty rough.
Yeah, and I hedged a lot of bets on the idea that I really like Rathbone and Schenn together, and I think they should fit. In theory, they should fit. They should be a good fit. So I'm sad to see that at least so far it hasn't paid off. He's in a way he's a little bit lucky that Hamonic isn't here right now, because he could be in a lot worse a spot right now than he is, because right now he still has the shot of being, because it's still so early, that you could potentially see a scenario where maybe they go, okay, he's going to make the team more or less, where versus say where if Hamonic's here, he's very much fighting with Brad Hunt for that last spot. He's very much in that seventh guy. I'm waiting to see I want to wait and see how he does in the next couple games before I make a total a final call on him. But yeah, he hasn't been as good as I had hoped in the early going.
Yeah, and then the big obvious defensive faller,
our boy, really, frankly, he's our boy now.
Show of the boy, or boy of the show, Olli Juolevi.
It's a tough. This is sad. This is
I don't even want to go in on it, because
I'll take care of this one. Okay,
he just sucked. Okay, he sucked.
Look, he got clearly called out by Travis Green after training camp. That was a pretty blatant. I remember I asked you on the last show. I said, do you think to the coaching staff that maybe it's more about the how you handle it, how you answer the question than what the answer actually was? Clearly that wasn't the case. Clearly it was immediately Travis was like, that didn't help him. Like he was very clear and adamant about that. And I'm like, I appreciate your honesty, Travis. Like that. Yeah, it did not help his cause at all. And frankly, Travis, but at the same time, Travis gave him 2 opportunities to go out and do something. Like he very easily after game 1, where he was not good, could have gone out and could have been like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done here. This is already a lost cause. I don't feel like trying this again. And put him in the press box. But he gave him a second shot and he didn't do anything with it. He didn't do it. He did absolutely nothing. There was that, I think it was what ended up being the game-winning goal in the first game against Seattle, where it literally went through his leg and then through Spencer Martin and in. Like, it was
that's definitely on Martin, because like, how do you not stop that? But
Juolevi's screening him for starters, like to a degree. Like I do, but yeah, Spencer Martin probably should have had that puck, but at the same time, that was a bit of a both guys made an oopsie. Yeah, they made a boo-boo on that one. It was very much a team effort on that goal. But yeah, he is somebody who absolutely needed to make a good impression out of anyone on the Canucks right now. I think he is the one that absolutely needed to make the best impression out of anybody in his opportunities to play, because he's in the hardest spot to get onto this team right now by a country mile, and he didn't do anything with it. I feel like at some point you gotta maybe cut your losses here with Juolevi. I don't see him as a 7th even here. I see him as Abbotsford again. We just got over this. He just got, graduated to the NHL. And here we are talking about potentially having to send him down again. And for how long, might be forever at this point, frankly.
I think the best thing going for him right now is that Hughes is not signed, because without Hughes, there is a logic behind having Olli Juolevi as your 7th or 3rd pairing left shot defenseman, even if he's not good at it, because the guys behind him, like Ashton Sautner, or, who else would it be? There's
Brad Hunt, maybe left side. Like that's it.
But
it might have been Brady Keeper had he not gotten hurt.
I think he's on the right side.
Yeah. I'm just thinking at this point, like your 7th defenseman, right? It's probably it can be either or, right? Like it's not a case of being a guaranteed lock on that. It might just be a case of what defenseman they like best, regardless of what handed they are. And he's not doing that. So yeah, he's very, very lucky that Hughes is not here right now. He would not be even, he might be gone already. He might be demoted already.
I was going to say he's the beneficiary of a few things. One, Hughes and Pettersson aren't signed still, and Travis Hamonic's questionable status. If the status of Hamonic is known and Hughes and Pettersson are re-signed, the biggest talking point from this preseason camp is his failure at the bag skate and his struggles in the preseason game. I thought he was fine in game 2, which is why I'm like, I can see him being a 7th defenseman option, or even the 3rd pair without Hughes. But as it stands, like, the only reason anyone here is talking about how he could be a 3rd pair defenseman or a 7th guy on this roster is because the superstar left shot defenseman is not signed. And that's pretty brutal for a guy who's had a lot go against him in his hockey career. I don't know. Yeah. There's not much else we can add. It's a rough time to be Olli Juolevi in the Vancouver market. Did you read the thing about people were like grilling him during the game? Like in Abbotsford, they were like shit talking him.
Like fans or like players? Oh,
there's some guy in like section 105 who was just like, "Get used to being here, you bum." Like really hard shit. That's like, come on.
Again, like let's be very clear. Like on this show, I'm sure sometimes people like to spin us as as negative media kind of thing and trying to group us in there. We want success for the players. Like we want to see them succeed. Yeah. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Yeah.
If Olli Juolevi talking about the shirts, we were like, Olli Juolevi making it and just proving everyone wrong is the best case scenario. Yeah.
I would love it if Olli Juolevi magically sprouted into a regular incredible, capable NHL defenseman. I would love to see that from him, but it's feeling so much more and more like it's just never going to happen. It feels like a lot of it. And, there's always the thing with the Canucks where they're very weird or very cautious about ever moving on from a big early first round draft pick if it doesn't pan out. We've obviously seen a few circumstances of that recently. But again, if Ulevi moved, like I said with the last guy, if Ulevi moves on to another team and magically turns into a better player, again, it should just cement for you that it was not going to be here. It just wasn't. It was exactly. That was just not here. Was just not the spot he could do that in, and that's fine. That's how players are. Not every player. There's no one formula that fits every player. Every player is different, and right now Ulevi's just not fitting. The one thing that's working out for him right here in Vancouver right now seems to be the fact that we made shirts with him on it. And so far he's helped raise about $110 for Canucks for Kids Fund. So that's nice.
Thanks, Ole. That's your standing
might be his highlight this year. And I feel bad. I feel bad about that aspect. I really wanted him to come out and prove and just make everybody eat crow on that, including us. Like that would have been great. It would have been
fine to eat crow on, Like, make us look stupid.
Like if Tyler Myers, who's the guy I've probably been the most critical of in the short 3 years on this show, if Tyler Myers goes out and scores the Stanley Cup winning goal for the Vancouver Canucks, I will build a statue of him in my home. Like you don't think I would absolutely be like, yeah, everything's forgiven with you right now. I will never say anything bad about you ever again.
I take back every mean thing I've ever said.
Yeah, and again, I'm not necessarily critical because I don't like the man just as much as I don't like the contract, right? You want the players individually. You want them to have success. You want them to be able to prove us wrong for doubting them. And it sucks when it doesn't happen. Like it really does. It's a bummer.
Prove me wrong, kids. Prove me wrong.
Principal Skinner. Great reference. Finish that one off. That's
should definitely close the episode with that video clip or that audio clip. I don't think we'll get sued because the writers of The Simpsons are pretty chill.
True, but it is owned by Disney now, so they are pretty litigious. So I don't think I will, but I would love to. Just know in spirit, I would love to. Yes.
Yeah. Picture it in your heads, kids.
Picture it in your heads.
Thank you guys. Or do you want to go over anything else or?
The one thing I did want to, there were two things actually I wanted to touch on before we get out of here. One is it came out, there were two things that came out. One was, I believe the NHL is going to announce this week that they're moving on to these new green uniforms for this year, which I believe we saw last night. I believe they were wearing them. Yeah, I think they were wearing them in that game.
The anti-plastic or whatever.
Yeah, it's made out of, I believe it's like a recycled ocean plastic uniform kind of thing. They're doing it for every NHL team. Among some of the stuff, they're actually doing some cool stuff with some of the uniforms, where they're actually embroidering in different areas essentially to give them different elements of in the design that aren't there on just the normal logos. You know how the Golden Knights uniforms, how there's that floral pattern on the sides of the jerseys, that's on the sides of the logo, that's not there on the actual picture logo. They're doing stuff like that for a couple teams, including the Canucks, who are getting the ice chip on the outside of the Orca is going to be embroidered and out and a little bit kind of like a 3D element there. That's kind of cool. Mostly I just wanted to mention that because on it, I know a lot of people are, cynical about the whole, convention, consumerism is environmental consumerism is still bad for the environment kind of thing. But the way I look at it in that case is they were going to make those jerseys anyway. If they're going to make them out of more recyclable things, I like that. I'm fine. I like that. Anything to do a little more, to do a little more. Every little thing we can chip away on that is good. I think that's fine. Hopefully you see it come to more things. And then the one last thing I did want to touch on before we get out of here that I know you'll probably want to talk about probably on the next episode as well. But before the game yesterday, the Canucks did their Truth and Reconciliation Day ceremony because they won't have a game again until Friday. Truth and Reconciliation Day is Thursday. I know this is a cause that's very important, near and dear to your heart. I think they did a very good job. I think they handled it very, very well. I loved seeing players like Bo Horvat and Vasily Podkolzin wearing those wearing Every Child Matters shirts.
Yeah,
that was incredible to see. I think the ceremony before the game was very well done and very classy, and it was all around a very nice time, a very nice thing to see the Canucks do, and they did it very well. And I'm proud of the team for doing so well on that.
Yeah, I had a tweet about it basically saying like the way the Canucks have handled their commitment to Indigenous rights issues, starting with the National Truth and Reconciliation Day, is like way better than any other sports team and most organizations in Canada, maybe even in North America as well. They've not bought in, but they've committed to it like a lot. Like look at what happened with the George Floyd murders and everyone's commitments to like, you know, ending racism, promoting diversity or whatever. And then like nothing really happened. It took the I think it's the Black Girl Hockey Club with their Get Uncomfortable pledge, and one team did it in like the first day, and then it took like a while 12 other teams to maybe also do it, but no one really committed to it. Whereas on this issue, it was like no question. The Canucks were just like, yeah, what happened to Indigenous persons in our past, and that was ongoing until like now, was a genocide and is a genocide. I don't even think the Leafs called it a genocide, and the fact that they did, and they stuck with it in their messaging for their pregame ceremonies on Monday's game was great. My only complaint is the audio for the Monday game was so bad you could barely hear anything. Yeah. So I'm sure watching the broadcast, you couldn't really hear it. But from what I could hear, because I had it blasted on my headphones so I could try and record it and hear it, still didn't really work. It sounded really powerful. I'm sure it was great in arena. And I have faith that they might do some more during the season and continue on with different programs and projects as the season goes on. Now that apparently they know who I am and I've interviewed the head coach of the Abbotsford team, maybe I can start asking them these kinds of questions and get actual answers on it.
Yeah, maybe. And yeah, also, you know, Bo Horvat did a very good job. Like you touched on this definitely yesterday. I know I did as well. Just Bo Horvat, we've mentioned before that I think he's a very good captain. And because again, I think being a captain of a hockey team, I think being a captain of any sports team, really, this is any major sports team. It's not just a job it's not just an on the ice job. It's an off the ice job too. It's about being a leader because you're going to be front and center for your team in all things and in your community as well. And I think just hearing Bo Horvat talk about it, and it's clearly like he clearly cares about it, and it's clearly a cause that's close that he really cares about, and that's important. I think that sets a good precedent, and I hope we see him more. Like I quibble with maybe calling him, say, a star, just because, you know, he's not necessarily like you know, the NHL is not necessarily making commercials out of him or anything of that sort. But like as a captain of a major Canadian NHL franchise, like I hope that more NHL players like start taking a page out of his book and doing more stuff like that, and being that outwardly and upfront about things like that in the future.
Yeah, he strikes me as definitely a very progressive fellow, and he very much leads by example, both on the ice and off the ice. We learned that in the playoff bubble with the way he approached Ryan Reeves of the Vegas Golden Knights about how they wanted to handle the protest against racial injustice. And so a very unironic and very serious dudes rock, because fucking Bo Horvat rocks, man. His reply, like the best thing about his answer to the National Truth and Reconciliation thing was he didn't know anything, but he learned about it recently and he thought it was terrible. He didn't try and offer up some empty platitude or like, you know, pretend that he was like the authority on the situation. He just offered sympathy and empathy and the desire and commitment to himself and his team to learning more about the situation. And sometimes that's all you need to do. So respect Mr. Horvat for that. That was awesome.
Hell yeah.
Otherwise,
this is a good way to end the show.
Yeah, some serious positivity after shitting on Oli Uolevi for the second episode. Anyways, folks, I have been one of your hosts. I am Cody Sievertson. You can follow me on Twitter at Cody Sievertson, my website, ahlnucksharvest.com, my Instagram for that site, which I barely use, ahlnucksharvest. Lachlan, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Lach and the Crease. You can also find me at lockthecrease.com, where I do articles sometimes. And you can find me on Locked On Canucks, which I do Monday to Friday with Nick Bondi on podcast platforms as well, if you haven't listened to my voice enough today. Also, make sure to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/CreaseCast. For $5 a month, you can get bonus podcasts, other exclusive content, where we got some stuff coming actually pretty quick here before we get into the season going. So there's going to be some good stuff on there coming soon. Some help is on the way as well for us as well. Yeah, we've got a show on Thursday as well this week. And then next week we go into like the Monday, Thursday regular schedule as we get kind of closer to that regular season. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Indeed. Get ready for the dual episodes where we hopefully aren't talking about Pettersson and Hughes' contracts every time.
God, I would love nothing more than to not talk about that ever again for a while.
That'd be nice.
Also the shirts we mentioned, the the Always Tired shirts are still available. And yeah, all proceeds from those are going to Canucks for Kids. So go check those out if you want some CreaseCast merch. You know, we're really happy you guys have been liking those. And hopefully we can raise a little bit more money for Canucks for Kids Fund over the next, month or so. We'll probably we'll set an end date at some point, maybe. I don't know. But for now,
we'll pick a random date. But otherwise, check out our store. We'll have the link in the description of the YouTube channel and our podcast, wherever you get it, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, all them shits.
Yes.
Get the merch. I got mine ready. That should be on its way, I think, first week of October, I think it said. I can't remember. But
I still got to buy mine.
Oh my goodness. Well, I got two coming my way. Looks very comfy and represents how I feel right now, which is always tired. Until next episode, I'll hopefully be rested. Hopefully Lachlan will be rested, and we'll have something positive to talk about. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll catch you on the flippity flip. Bye.
Bye.